Hello, hello, and welcome to the Difference Makers Live podcast. My name is Anita Robinson, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to the nation's top aviation attorneys. We have our Director of Aviation, Joe LaRusso, joined by two of our other aviation attorneys, Matt Bulow and Zeke Dennison. Today they're going to talk about medical certificates for pilots. They're going to talk about NTSB appeals, and most importantly, aviation aeromedical reform within the FAA. So you won't want to miss this episode. Make sure to join us and give us a 5-star review if you like this episode. Thank you guys.
Everybody, welcome to the Aviation Roundtable, which is actually on a straight table today. It's important to notice. I'm Joe LaRusso. I'm the Director of Aviation here at Ramos Law. Introductions? Go ahead, fellas. Matt?
I'm Matt Bulow. I'm the newest member of the aviation attorney team here. I'm working with Zeke on the medical certificate defense side. And so, aviation attorney, do primarily medical certificate defense, and I work with Zeke over here.
That leads you to Zeke?
That's who I am. Zeke Dennison, or Ezekiel, actually first name. Med Cert lead counsel over here at Ramos. Kind of the third musketeer in the aviation division. So,
you guys look phenomenal today, I have to say. These suits are impressive.
Every day.
Wanted to chat a little bit about kind of a roundtable discussion on the straight table about aviation in general. And specifically, we are going to be live. I think we're live right now on Instagram. This is all going to be put on the YouTube later and a lot of our different social media platforms. And there is going to be QAs at the end of this coming from Instagram. So if you got questions on Instagram, throw them in the Instagram comments, and we'll make sure to address them here at the end. But I think it's probably helpful at the beginning to get into more of a general conversation, because I think that's probably going to answer a lot of questions that people may have coming in through Instagram. So I'm going to open it up to Zeke here. Tell us a little bit about the average certificate defense case. What are you seeing the most of?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, you can literally be anything medical related. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is we're vetting pilots to see if they're meeting the standards, 107, 207, 307 for the mental standards, just those parts and subchapters for, general first, second, and third class guys. I say, honestly, when an attorney's involved, we can be involved in anything. If it's anything that's even just a very brief, like, hey, can I please get a second opinion on this? Because I just don't know what the system looks like. I need a guide. We're happy to do that. I mean, there's nothing too small that we can't take a look at and help out, because peace of mind is frankly, I think, a lot more benefit than people realize. And then we also go all the way up to the crazy ones that are multiple conditions, multiple issues at the same time, then probably spanned out for a couple years. Guys have been trying for a long time. Cardiac, mental health conditions are a big one. And there's always something new in aviation popping up. So something I probably won't even know about yet for the next week. Sure. What about you, Matt? What would you say?
We see, like you said, a lot of like mental health and psychiatric stuff, airmen who have, history of using medication or stuff, even as, if you're, a kid and used Adderall, stuff like that. We see a lot of pilots with that as an issue, something in their past that they don't even, realize when they want to be a pilot. They don't think about it, don't report it sometimes. And so, like you said, peace of mind is huge. And so it's always a pleasure helping out these pilots who have something in their past that, again, they forgot about and have left behind them. And so it's always a pleasure to help them get in the air.
Matt, that's a great point, too, of something they forgot about in their past. And I get this question all the time. I'm sure y'all do as well. How much is past, right? How do we define past? Is past like within the last year? What does the FAA actually care about?
They're looking at your whole life. So the FAA goes, again, they'll look through your entire medical record if they can get a hold of it, and they'll go all the way, again, like I said, a lot of childhood diagnoses of, we see ADHD, ADD a lot. So a childhood diagnosis of that, they're going to look at that. For medication, they have certain standards for reporting current use and things like that, but even so, if it's a certain kind of medication that addresses, certain psychiatric or mental health conditions, they're going back through your whole life. So you got to really think back and consider, decades of medical treatment perhaps for some people. So it's a long list that they're looking at.
Have you ever been in your life had diagnosed? I think that's something like that for the language.
That's it. Box 18.
So yeah, people think about it like, how am I feeling right now? Right? Like, I maybe went to the doctor last year, but I'm fine. But they're like, oh yeah, I also had it. Well, a lot of guys also don't know the actual diagnoses they have. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, they maybe said they, went to a therapist for a minute and don't realize they had a major depressive disorder thrown in there.
Right.
And they're like, okay, well, now I got to deal with that, which is much different than like an adjustment disorder in the eyes of the FAA.
Sure.
So like a lot of guys piggybacking off Matt anytime ever. And so the farther away from it you forget you even had one, and you don't even know what it is sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. That's a great point. Obviously, the box that we're concerned about for the pilots that are watching is box 18 on the 8500 of the Med Express. And box 18 generally says it's A through what, Y, I think now, V?
Or whiskey?
Yeah, it goes to at least V. Whiskey.
Somewhere
Whiskey's
in
the
there.
last one. Whiskey's where it ends. Yep.
Yeah, babies. That box 18 is horrendous. That question is absolutely horrendous. I've often said that you either need to be an attorney or you need to be a doctor to figure that out, because it's got everything from, do you suffer from mental disorders? And then it also, my favorite one that I bring up all the time is stomach trouble. Have you ever in your life experienced stomach trouble? I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know that the FAA actually knows what that means, but yet it's on there.
It's definitely just a catch-all. They're trying to get anything they can get. Yeah. Which in certain circumstances, I guess, makes sense, right? But
sure.
Yeah, it's pretty broad.
Yeah, the another one that I bring up, the hospitalizations at any time in your life. If you went in for a little we see all the time, tonsillectomy. You went to get your tonsils out, the FAA's got to know about it.
Right.
So it can be ridiculous, and so if that stuff goes, again, if you don't report something like that, that technically is, again, lying to the FAA. So something you really got to make sure you got everything buttoned up when you turn in that 8500 on the Med Express. So.
Yeah, and that's a government form. That's defrauding the government, right? If you're found to be fraudulent on that form. And it is, I think it's something like $250,000 civil penalty, up to 5 years in jail, somewhere in there. And then what's crazy about that too is that's just on the medical side. Then you got the full legal action that follows that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, if legal gets involved and they think there's fraud, which, I mean, frankly, everybody, whenever they approach these cases, we all have, as attorneys, our own ways of thinking about this, right? FAA legal has their own approach, which is just the nature of the game, right? They're going to approach a case differently than we are. And I feel like whenever these kind of cases come up, they're always thinking, maybe worst case scenario first, right? Trying to make sure we're getting guys out of the sky who shouldn't be in there, shooting first, asking questions later. Yep. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that's how they approach it. Yeah. So when we bring this up, we're trying to make sure we're not, we're getting it out of that camp, right? And getting it into the camp of what's really going on here. Was this something we were talking about where the guy is maybe just forgot because it was legitimately a mistake, as opposed to you are defrauding the government and you are consciously and knowingly doing this on a day-to-day basis.
The worst.
Yeah, so it's right. There's usually somewhere in between.
Lying to the government so you can fly is bad. Don't do that. That's
of course.
Big takeaway here.
Yeah, big takeaway. Yeah, and what's crazy too is if you look at the regulations and you look at the FAA's order for how legal works. So the FAA's order is 2150.3C, and that's the sanction guideline table for the FAA attorneys. And that literally takes, if you read it, it's available online, it's an FAA order. Mm-hmm. It literally takes all discretion for an FAA attorney completely out. Like they have they have a certain criteria. Is it a moderate or severe offense? Is it a first-time offense? There's a bunch of mitigating factors, but they're essentially connecting the x-axis with the y-axis and going revocation. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the 2150 3C's take on whether you're fraudulently, intentionally defrauding the government, or whether you made a mistake, right? Not knowingly made a mistake on your 8500, literally the exact same penalty of revocation.
Right.
So, I know I get pilots all the time on the certificate actions and on the enforcement side where they say, Joe, I made a mistake. Why can't they see I made a mistake? And it kills me to say, look, I know you made a mistake, but the 2150 3C does not differentiate.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a great point. Right, as we're, it's a difficult conversation to have with any of the clients because we understand where you're coming from. Yeah. And we're really trying not to fearmonger. I mean, I think that's first and foremost, right? Is it's not like you need to have this or, your life's going to be in shambles, but that is just kind of what the system sets up, right?
Yeah.
Is it's flying is a privilege, not a right. So a lot of the FAA response is in that vein, and they take a very stern approach to it. Not to say we can't get through it. That's obviously why we're here. That's why we do what we do.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why we exist.
Yeah. That's our main goal, is getting your wings back, right? So I think that's a huge point for people to know, though, is that this is the cards you're dealt with when you come to the situation, right? We're also not saying just roll over either. I mean, stand up for yourself, right? That's also why we're here.
Right.
But it is a different set of playing cards as opposed to when you're like a civil litigation or, criminal cases.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're all different.
Yeah.
Administrative law.
The lack of discretion is unbelievable. This is the question that I get all the time, that I've gotten for a very long time. And Matt, I'm going to give it to you.
Here we go. This should be good.
Because now you're getting these questions. How long does it take to get a medical back?
Oh, man. Yeah, I get that question daily.
It's a golden question.
Here we go. So, timelines. Lawyers love that question, right?
Yep.
So here's the...
And we're going to hold you to it.
Yeah,
exactly. Right now.
I'm starting the clock.
here's the golden answer. It depends, frankly. So it depends on, your case, your facts, particularly, when we're dealing with the medical certification, depends on your condition. So the FAA has different guidelines for how their reviewers in Oklahoma City and Washington, D.C. review these airmen's files, and how AMEs review the airmen that they see in person for their physical exams. But those guides, have different requests and request different documents, different exams in some cases. And then the real long wait is once you send your file off to the FAA at OKC or Washington, D.C., it'll sit in a pile for a few months while they wait to review it. So unfortunately, we have to give a very broad timeline. We see anything from when being reviewed in Oklahoma City for simpler cases, we see anywhere from like 2 months. And then for more complicated like cases with alcohol or something that requires psychiatric evaluation or neuropsychologist evaluation, those can take 8 months to a year or more. So unfortunately, it depends on your condition and the facts of your case. But reviews, I would budget more time than less if you're looking at a review process here with the FAA. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Just always approach it as if it's going to take longer than you think. We definitely work to try and be as fast as possible.
Yeah.
A lot of that means, attorney-client privilege obviously comes into play. You give us, that opening. You trust us, which we appreciate. Then that gives us the idea of, okay, what is this fact pattern going to be in replace to the policies, right? Which change. And then how can we make sure that we get you set up in the position you need to be as quick as possible? Because Matt hit it right on the head. I mean, you could be a year out, 2-3 years even sometimes on some cases. It's a wild world because your medical health is changing every day too. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and it can be ridiculous out there sometimes. The FAA just has a stack of applications that they're waiting to review right now that is thousands deep, and so they're undermanned and overworked out there. So can't really blame the FAA and the employees there, but it's an unfortunate situation, and airmen are suffering right now. So we're trying to do our best. And so on that note, Zeke, I know you kind of mentioned it here that what we do is we really try to reduce that letter game, because that does take months at a time. And so reaching out to an aviation attorney, or even if you're working, on your own, to make sure the FAA has everything they need to review the first time through. You definitely want to get it right the first time, so you're not going back and forth, because just exchanging 2 letters with the FAA can take a year or more, the better part of a year. So you definitely don't want to be playing that game with them. You want to give them all that they need on the first shot.
That's one of the more frustrating aspects of the FAA, I would say, is there's a stat online, the famous stat that people throw in our face all the time, is that less than 0.01% of pilots end up with a medical, right? Or 0.01% of pilots end up getting denied a medical is the stat. I would argue to that, one, that stat doesn't exist. I would love to see the actual numbers on that, because it's not real. But even if it was real, I think the way that it gets justified is the FAA, what we call 413 you to death, right?
Oh, yeah.
The FAA will send a letter under 14 CFR 67.413, which basically allows the FAA to get medical records, because, HIPAA exists, unless you're the FAA and the VA, but HIPAA exists where, the FAA just can't reach out to your doctor and go get your medical records, right? So 413, they have to ask you for it.
Right.
And then they're constantly asking for it again, right? So give us this. And now it's a new treasure hunt, right? Pilots give them the full documents again. The FAA looks at every single line on those documents, trying to find something else, right? What may have started as a kidney stone issue is now a childhood ADHD diagnosis, right? And then another 413 letter, and then another 413 letter, until, one, the pilot gets frustrated and quits, or two, the pilot gets frustrated and quits. It just doesn't, it's just 413.
Which is not a denial.
Which is not a denial.
So
yeah, it's not a denial,
not
right? You left on your
0.01.
own accord.
Yeah.
That's honestly, I think that's a good portion of what we do in the certificate defense side of the house, is look at the medical records, look at the fact pattern, look at the potential diagnoses, and then say, all right, if I'm the FAA, what am I looking at here, right? How do I put records forward so that the FAA is not going to 413 this thing to death?
Yeah, and honestly, to jump off of that too, and that's a huge point, right? I think Joe's probably had cases that go 4 or 5 years almost.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
easily.
And really with these cases, I think, obviously I would say it's a tiered system, really. Like the first one is, let's figure out how we can get this, it's all administrative law essentially, right? So the first system is, how can we get this cleared without being 413 to death? So how can I get everything in front of them, make sure that they see it, because it takes months for them to just review it. They see it, they're like, okay, this is great under the regulations, under your mental health or whatever, medical health, you're fine. If we're stuck there and we keep going through that, what we're trying to do is essentially set the record, so that when we have to move on to an NTSB case, or if we have to go to district court, everything that you have done previously in that first tier is setting that record, so that it is extremely difficult for the FAA to come back in front of either administrative law judge or the district court, say, yeah, we were acting with reason.
Yeah.
And this is clear why we didn't give this guy his medical, right? The whole point is that we can go back and say, okay, maybe this took 2 years to get here. In that 2 years, you did not appropriately vet this information. You did not listen to the experts that we sent forward, right? So when you come at it, it's like this macro level view, right? How do I get through this first quickly and efficiently as possible? And then two, if I can't get through it at that point, how do I make sure that what I did before was set in the record straight, so that when somebody else looks at it, hopefully they're getting that view
right
more accurately.
I love to throw shade on the FAA. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm not shy about that. But they have done some changes in response to the ARC, which, an interesting tidbit about that is, everybody knows that there's been a lot of pressure on the FAA to address mental health. There's been a lot of very public events involving mental health and pilots that has forced Congress to say, wait a second, are we doing everything we can, right, to make sure that the skies are safe? We all know about the Alaskan Air incident, and that forced the NTSB to do a roundtable. And what I think is hilarious about it is the NTSB noticed up their safety roundtable on December 5th of last year, and the exact same day the FAA then said on December 5th, we're also going to do an ARC about it. And then the NTSB came back and said, well, we actually thought about the idea in November. I think that's hilarious that those two agencies who are supposed to do the exact same thing and are supposed to be aligned in aviation safety are just trying to look better to their parents, to Congress.
Got to get that funding.
Yeah, exactly. That aside, the FAA, the ARC did happen. We had 24 recommendations involving mental health on a very robust ARC. We have senators that are coming through. We have congressmen that are coming through. We got bipartisan letters that are coming through. What do you guys think? Is it working? Is it not working? Kudos? No kudos?
Sure, I'll take the first swipe
Go
at
ahead.
this one. So the FAA definitely has started responding to those ARC recommendations. So there were 24 recommendations that came out, and as Joe kind of alluded to here, that they did a fantastic job on the ARC and gave some very actionable recommendations that the FAA can actually move on and make some progress in the right direction for mental health. One of the big changes that they made recently, it was in the middle of the summer here in June, they updated their guide for depression, anxiety, and related conditions, as they're calling it. And so the big goal of this was to allow for immediate issuance to pilots who are getting talk therapy, psychotherapy. They're just seeing a therapist. And it unfortunately does not do much for airmen who are taking medication. They still have to go through that long certification process. But for airmen with, again, this history of any time in your life with some sort of uncomplicated depression or anxiety, so this is what Zeke was mentioning, is if you get the major depressive disorder, that complicates things. So it's a very limited group, but they are allowing for immediate issuance in those cases now. So baby steps. Still
Sure.
a lot of progress to be made, but again, they're trying to speed up this review process and allow AMEs a little more discretion, which I think is the biggest thing of these changes, is to put more discretion in the hands of AMEs and allow them to give airmen their medicals, because the AMEs are the ones seeing these airmen in person, and so they know them far better than a reviewer looking through their medical file on a desk. So that's what I think is the big change there, and I hope the FAA continues to make progress on that front.
I mean, I have to give them some kudos, honestly. There's always two sides to the coin, yin and yang, right? We're on one side, they're on the other side. In order to get really anywhere in whatever it is, whatever area of law, both sides have to talk, be with each other, understand what the other side is saying. And frankly, for them to come after, I think it was, April 20th this year, where they dropped the recommendations. And then in June had something. Motives aside, whatever it is, that's progress. And I just hope they keep doing that and know that everybody's trying to have a same goal, which is flying safely. I mean, I don't know a pilot who would want to go up in the air who doesn't want to feel like they're good, right? They take it seriously. They're not running around just thinking this is, something you go through so much training. It's not like riding a bike, it's definitely a difficult thing to do. So I feel like nobody wants to go up there feeling unprepared.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a misconception about what we do specifically. When I tell people that we, help pilots get their medical certificates, I think a lot of people think we're representing, the bad eggs that probably shouldn't be in the air. In reality, we don't take on those clients. The airmen we love to see and that are the ones always coming through our door are, they made a single mistake. It's not a reflection of, their lifetime character. They're all very well qualified to fly, a plane. And so it's fighting these medical issues that, again, the FAA sees as aeromedically significant that in, certain cases may not be, even based on their own regulations. So it's not trying to get unsafe pilots in the air. We're always looking for healthy, safe airmen. And we're, again, same page as the FAA. We're trying to keep the airspace safe. That's always the goal here.
Yeah, right. We'll keep your receipts though too, FAA, right? If you save one thing and you don't do it, then that's just being disingenuous. But I think, to answer the question, it was kudos on them for trying to get something started. And then obviously let time tell how that works, and hopefully we recalibrate every so often to make sure it is what it needs to be.
I think the big kudos in my mind is to our representatives, because they have not taken their foot off the gas, and they've been holding the FAA accountable. Usually, what we see in this industry is there's some big event that happens. Everybody tries to look like they're doing the most, right? The FAA tries to look like they're doing the most. The NTSB tries to look like they're doing the most. And then another news cycle comes by, right? Yeah. And then everybody's done doing that, and they go back to status quo. But, we just had, Congressman Caston just put out that Transparency and Aviation Act, where he's asking the FAA to publish the list of medications that they have blacklisted. That is a phenomenal push. That's going to the House Absolutely. Now. That is so frustrating. A lot of people don't know that. They always call us and say, hey, I'm taking X medication. Is that okay? And it really is kind of like a forum thing where, all of us have to rely on each other. Aviation attorneys are relying on aviation attorneys, AMEs on AMEs, pilots on pilots. And we're trying to figure out what is acceptable because the FAA doesn't publish a list. No. Which is ridiculous. It's just always like, well, I'll try it, I guess, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you look at the regulation itself, the language of 61.53, the prohibition on operating during medical deficiency. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It literally says, you can't fly essentially in a capacity as a required pilot flight crew member while that person is taking medication or receiving other treatment that results in that person being unable to meet the requirements. What medication? That's like the point, right? It's like please just tell us what the list is and tell us why, right?
And that regulation puts all the onus on the pilots and
exactly
flight crew members to figure it out for yourselves. Does this disqualify you?
Right.
Yeah. And this is like Joe said, fantastic push. That we need more information, and that's I think everyone's on the same page there. Getting everyone all the information so that we can make safe decisions and keep the skies safe.
100%.
Bringing up 6153, that is a regulation that I love and hate. So I love it because as pilots, like I'm not gonna if I know that I just had a heart attack yesterday, I'm not gonna go fly an airplane. Like I'm gonna go to the cardiologist, right? Like, you know what I mean? If I have like a full on flu and I'm vomiting for 24 hours straight, I'm probably not gonna fly, right? I say probably. I know I'm not gonna fly, and I think that goes for any pilot. 6153 is pilots being able to police pilots, yes. And I promise you, pilots are good at policing pilots. We also do not want to die. So when we know there's
wild enough, right?
Yeah. So when we know that there's a medical issue, we're gonna police ourselves, and the FAA looks at 6153 and says, not enough. We got to police you too. Yeah. And that's when we get those emergency revocations of, well, now I'm stripping your medical and now I'm stripping your pilot's license because they don't trust pilots to be like, hey, I have kidney stones. I'm not gonna fly until that gets resolved.
Right.
No, it's got to be well, we're going to make sure that you don't. And I think that's a little bit too much of Big Brother on 6153. It's like, we're given the reins, but then those reins are taken right back from us. So it's a frustrating reg.
Well, I mean, you think about attorneys, doctors, any other professionals in their careers, they have their own professionalism standards, ethics, right? I mean, you're given that ability to make determinations because of who you are, what you've been taught, and where you are in your position, right? Yeah. So 6153 feels a lot like me to that, like you were just saying.
Right.
Like, let's give that professional pilot a little bit of discretion because they are a professional.
Yeah.
That's what that word means.
Yeah. So, yeah. I will throw out a quick time hack. 15 minutes from now, we're going to be answering all the questions that are popping up on Instagram. We see them coming through. So trying to give you just kind of like a general overview now, because these are all the same questions that we get, and they are fantastic questions, and they bear repeating. So trying to hit the general ones. But yeah, 15 minutes from now, we'll hit the Q&As. If we get piled up on questions too, we'll try and get to them a little early. So please throw in the comment section there, leave all your questions in that comment section, and we'll get to it as quickly as we can. Staying within the good parts about aviation.
right.
We've been talking a little bit about our frustrations, rightly so, as aviation attorneys, dealing with the FAA, dealing with the regulations as intimately as we deal with them. But there are good parts to aviation that aren't all frustrating.
There's a reason we're in the industry, right? There's a reason we're here.
Yeah. Tell us about it. Give us a little bit about you. What do you love about aviation?
Oh man, aviation is awesome. I'm pretty much new to the industry. I'm a lawyer first and hoping to be a pilot second. I'm looking to start that journey pretty soon here. But I definitely kind of just stumbled into it after law school, fell in love with aviation, and now I'm working out of, we're at the Metro Airport here in Broomfield, and it's just a blast seeing planes, take off, land all day, learning about the different aircraft coming in here, and, learning about the whole aviation industry is so cool. It's just way more fun than, pushing papers and crunching numbers behind a desk somewhere every day. So love it here for sure.
Matt's also a space law guy.
Yeah, I was just about to say, before we pass off to Zeke, Matt is our space law guru. So he's constantly thinking about the next evolution of aviation law, getting into space, and that is something that is wildly fascinating to me. But I also know zero about it. So that's Matt. We are very, very fortunate to have Matt on that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Zeke?
Oh, so yeah, Matt, he's space law. I'm going to call him the space law guy. I hope that sticks. And, everybody knows Joe. So I kind of bring another element, I guess. I practiced before I came here. I was just a small town Wyoming attorney doing a little bit of everything. Then I actually have family members in the space. My great-grandfathers both were in the Air Force. My dad flies and is also in this world explicitly.
In the industry?
In the industry, yep. So that's kind of how I got connected to Joe, kind of through the psychological side of the house. I'm also working on my, ratings, getting my private pilots, all that good stuff. It's just, I feel like even though I don't have it, I still talk to so many pilots and know them and, work with a good one here and it's soon to be a very good one over there too. And frankly, I think just the freedom, just doing it. I don't know how to explain it. I think you all know what I'm talking about. It's very easy to get behind that. Very easy to be a advocate for that.
Sure. Yeah. Hit him with that major.
What major?
What's your major? What was your major in undergrad?
Oh, I did psychology and economics and minored in Spanish, if that makes any difference.
I think it does. I'll tell you that's Zeke having that psych background, that psychology background. That is a lot what goes into this, because you definitely have to, one, know the psychology, know the psychiatry. Those are, I would say, the most common experts that we work with are psychologists 100%. And psychiatrists, with some others being, cardiologists, oncologists, but primarily working with psychologists and psychiatrists. And to have the training that Zeke has and that knowledge base to be able to look at a case from that perspective and think, all right, from a psychologist standpoint, this is what we're going to need. From a psychiatrist standpoint, this is what we're going to need. But at the same time, being able to understand exactly what a pilot is saying to you, right? Mm-hmm. And be able to sympathize and empathize and be able to realize what this means to them and what this representation means to them. That is huge. Mm-hmm. That is something prolific that Zeke brings to the table as the head of our certificate defense division. That background is crucial. So between the two of these guys, I think we're pretty well set up on the certificate defense side. So
yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to Matt too, because I think we kind of mentioned it before. The way that these cases are taken care of is not in front of a judge. You're not talking to an FAA evaluator directly. Even the AMEs are, siphoned off a little bit. There's a little bit of insulation. So how do you make your case? Writing. You have to be very on top of your writing. You have to make sure that this is all cinched up together in a nice argument that's under the regulations. And I feel like Matt is an excellent writer. And so whenever something goes through his desk, gets to the FAA, that's how you're going to know it's getting reviewed correctly.
For sure.
That's certainly the world we live in. I learned it all from Zeke first and foremost. So
which we learned from Joe. Let's go back to the top here. What about yourself?
But I think that's a big thing that a lot of airmen ask us. Why can't I just call up an evaluator? Why can't they see me in person? Why can't I talk to someone at the FAA?
Right.
And unfortunately, we have to tell them that they can't. The FAA simply, the Federal Air Surgeon, the reviewers at OKC, they're simply not taking appointments. So they're not going to talk to airmen directly. So you have to talk to them through paper, unfortunately. You have to get something on their desk, and you have to make your argument clear, concise, and something, that they can approach sitting at a desk rather than in front of your face. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And so that's, for me, that's what I like to do. I love to write. It's very unfortunate for our airmen, but that's what we're here for, is to help bridge that gap. So, I think that's a great point.
I gotta ask. So let's say, hypothetically, we're on the International Space Station now, right? We got like I don't know, an Italian on there.
Here we go.
All right, we got an Italian on there, and then like maybe we got somebody from India, and they start fighting. What law gets applied?
That's
there?
interesting. Yeah. So space law. We'll dive in. Let's do some space law.
Let's dive in. I'm curious.
So yeah, the awesome part about space law that really kind of vibed with aviation law that helped make the transition easy for me is that it's all kind of a kangaroo court because it's so international. So with aviation law, obviously that's dealt with by the FAA, a United States government agency, at least what we do here. But even so, it's an international profession, hobby, industry. And so the laws have to interact well internationally, and so that's huge in space law. It's all international law. These countries have to work together in outer space, and there's very little actual firm law, and so it's a lot of cooperation, which is easier said than done. And so if there was a fight on the International Space Station, that'd get real interesting real quick. I'm not quite sure which laws would apply. We'd have to start looking into which countries are involved. I think right now, obviously, we've got a bunch of fantastic astronauts, and they work together fantastically on the International Space Station, have for decades, but right now they're calling some American astronauts stranded because the Boeing Starliner is unable to get them back from the ISS. So if my facts are correct, I believe an American astronaut is currently bunking with in the Japanese portion of or Chinese portion, one of those sides of the International Space Station. So they are sharing space. So that hypothetical might not be so hypothetical for long.
Sharing space.
Sharing space in space.
Wasn't he supposed to be like 19 days up there? And
it was supposed to be a quick trip, and now
Holy
Boeing
cow.
and SpaceX are scrambling to get him back. But we'll see. We'll see how that situation plays out here soon enough, I hope.
Yeah, that's got to be a Dragon flight, I would assume, right, at this point? Like, let's just hand it off to Elon and go get him.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Starlink.
You're doing a good job, Boeing. A lot of good positive news.
It's going to be okay, Boeing. It's all going to be okay.
Positive news for you guys. Before we open it, we're tight on going to questions here, and I'm a little nervous opening this up, but I'm going to open it up. What do you guys think about hymns?
Zeke, I'll let you take that one first. That's a big question.
Well, full transparency, I have been doing this for a while, but not as long as Mr. LaRusso here. So a lot of my hymns understanding comes from him, what other pilots are saying, kind of what the industry said, right? And my understanding has changed over the years. It's been something that was maybe initially you go in, you get your treatment, and then you're back out pretty quickly. Now I can tell you it's been more of a lifetime disease model, something where they believe relapse can happen at any time. You're going through a lot of hoops to get back into the cockpit, and then once you're there, you're on special issuances for 8+ years, and that's directly from HIMSS program itself. That's no fear mongering. That's just what it is. I feel like I have very attorney answers. Like I'm never very, it is this way, right? I try and go both sides. And frankly, some people need that. Some people need to go to inpatient. Some people need to get their life together again because it's just, stuff happens, right? PG version of saying that.
Yes.
Stuff happens.
Yes.
And so that makes sense, but it also can be extrapolated into something that more people are into it than they need to be, right?
Yep.
So you got guys who had a mistake, You have guys or gals that have had, one funky thing happen, and then all of a sudden, because we're checking boxes, we're going by policies which are just so long and take forever, these guys are getting stuck in there. And even if they're not in the end stuck in it, it takes probably, us working through a case for a year maybe to explain why they shouldn't be in that.
Right.
Which could be something that could be done a lot quicker. So
agreed.
HIMSS program, I don't think it should be gone, but I also think it needs to be looked at a little bit. Frankly, with any of these programs, I think we just need quicker resolution. Maybe we do regionals, then go to OKC, then go to FAS, so that we can have more people working on them a little bit quicker.
I'd vote for you.
So,
Matt?
2024. Yep.
I'm pretty much with Zeke here. The HIMSS program, is my understanding. It's changed over the years. The form I know it in, it's certainly that lifetime, disease model, and so I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to pass judgment or opinion. I'm not the moral police either, and so my frank opinion here is that the one size fits all solution is no solution at all. And so it seems like that's the boat we're in right now, is that we've turned this into a one size fits all solution. We're going to put everyone in the lifetime disease model with 8 years of special issuance monitoring if you want to fly a plane. And to me, that just seems like we're casting too broad a net. And so those are essentially my thoughts on a macro level there for everyone.
Well said. We did get a question coming through here now. I'm opening it up to questions. This is Advin the Aviator. Can you discuss the legality of being a 100% disabled vet, former military pilot, and flying for an airline? So first and foremost, thank you to everybody who has served and is now making that transition into the aviation world. We certainly appreciate you. The VA question is a big one. I'll take my first stab at this here. So this is the frustrating part about the FAA. I feel like I've said that sentence a lot. Honestly, I feel like that should be my tagline, is this is frustrating about the FAA. But in any event, the FAA, their mandate from Congress is to address aeromedical concerns. Aeromedical concerns. So what does that mean? Generally, there's no definition. Right? It's not defined.
Yeah, can I get a definition, please?
14 CFR 1.1 is not defined. So go look for it there. It's not there. So aeromedical, I believe aeromedical is, does that medical condition impact your ability to safely operate an aircraft, to act as PIC, right?
I think that's a fantastic definition.
Yeah, sure. So if your back hurts, right? If you got lumbar strain, right? I would be concerned from an aeromedical perspective. All right, one, is that pain in any way incapacitating? No. All right, I don't care. Two, is that pain any way creating stiffness that you can't reach across the cockpit and pull a circuit breaker? No? All right, well then I'm fine with it. I don't care. And that's the way it should be. And that's the way the FAA is for a lot of conditions, but then they're also very obtuse with a lot of conditions, and they're very objective with a lot of conditions, where all of a sudden aeromedical issues are just medical issues. Anything medical becomes aeromedical.
Right.
So I say that very long answer to what should be a short answer. Can you fly with 100% disability? Absolutely, you can fly with 100% disability. Let's say that 100% disability is on, it's a combination of lumbar, tinnitus, plantar's fascia. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different diagnoses that are adding up to 100%. Of course you can fly, because those are not aeromedical concerns, or shouldn't be aeromedical concerns. The other aspect, before I hand it off to y'all on that, the other aspect I'll say is when you leave the military, when you separate from the military, you meet with a separation counselor. And the separation counselor gives the famous line of, hey, this is not for now, this is for later. So, you got a 19-year-old grunt who's coming out, maybe they hurt their back again, lumbar strain. They meet with the separation counselor. Separation counselor says, let me throw a percentage on it, right? It may not hurt you right now, but when you're in your 20s, maybe 30s, maybe 40s, maybe 50s, probably 60s, maybe getting a little bit more prevalent. Mm-hmm. That's why that exists. Mm-hmm. That's why that exists, is so that you're taken care of in your later years for the sacrifice that you made in your younger years. There's no way that a future care issue should impact your ability to be a pilot today? Said simply, I guess that's a very long answer, and I get frustrated about it. So, but yeah, what do you guys think?
I'm right with you. Again, we've been using the term frustrating a lot, but it's very frustrating, and it seems I think the FAA forgets that VA math is not the same as their math should be. 100% disability for a VA disability sheet is not the same as it doesn't 100% disable you from flying an airplane safely. So. Yeah, it's frustrating, as you said, that the FAA can often step out of its lane and try to be a little bit more big brother than it has to be.
Well, I think like the VA ones are really interesting too, because special issuances are a thing, and the regulations in 401 talk about how you're supposed to think about what the ability of the pilot is. Mm-hmm. Right, the privileges, all those things. So for example, Vin, the aviator here, former military pilot. I think he probably has some experience, right?
Yeah,
I think the civilian side should reflect that. And again, very attorney answer. Everything, it depends on the case. Like Joe was saying, what is in that 100%? Right? Is this something that's maintaining a future ability? So when you're in your 70s and you really need that help, great, you have it. But if it's something that's actually hurting at that point, then I think we're at a position to vet that. But then there's also a special issuance. So
great point.
That's
an interesting point that you brought up too, about the juxtaposition between the military and the FAA world, right? The civilian flying world. Air Force now allows you to have a flight waiver, a special flight waiver for PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And the FAA is they can get you a medical, they can get you a special issuance with PTSD, but you got to jump through a lot of hoops for it, and you got to meet their fast track, and you got to, all the boxes have to be checked. Yes, It's just not that way in the Air Force, and I don't know if the FAA thinks that our sky is segregated, but it's not. It turns out that we're all up there at the exact same time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Air Force get their own special altitude.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, exactly. Super frustrating. Another one coming in. The FAA. This is from Kamahi 11. I'm sure I'm pronouncing these wrong. I don't even know why I try and pronounce these.
Nailed it.
The FAA is 90K behind on the medical side. They claim shortage of employees. How is it possible that they sit on all these cases, putting families in financial hardship, and what could be done to get them? Hand it off to y'all.
Yeah, that's easy one. Geez. Yeah. That we're with you. Frustrating. They are, unfortunately, yes, they're sitting on these cases and waiting for review, understaffed, overworked. What can be done? We could, I wish the government would just throw unlimited money at the FAA so they can hire all the help they need. That would allow them to hire a couple attorneys in their division that actually deal with legal regulations rather than all doctors. But unfortunately, we're kind of against a brick wall right now. We're in need of some political pressure on the FAA to revamp their staff and essentially fix up their processes, because they currently are not working. And as you notice, pilots are suffering.
Yeah, I don't think there's really one answer. These are always the hardest calls, I think, with my clients, because a lot of guys and gals are trying to support families. And I can tell you there's pressure points, right, from your AME. They can call in and try and get it on the phone with somebody. We obviously do what we do. The pilots themselves can call. But frankly, it's just set up in a way that there is that insulation inherently. So these 90K behind, right, the claim shortage of employees, how is it possible to be sitting on there? I think just because of that inherent disassociation with what they're doing on a regular day-to-day basis and who that particular pilot is, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance there, where they just don't understand that this is taking forever and it's really hurting people's livelihoods. It's hurting everything that they're trying to do here. So that's not a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with y'all. I wish there was a good answer.
Yeah.
I will tell you that I don't know where that 90K number is coming from. The last hard number I got was 27,000. Now, in no way is that better than 90K. Like,
Yeah.
I guess it's a smaller number, but
And I got 20 recently, so maybe they
Yeah.
are going a little quicker. Hopefully.
you know what's interesting about it is, this kind of reminds me of aircraft registration. Aircraft reg was super behind for a long time. Like, they were years behind, and when they were so far behind, they eventually ended up looking at the process and thinking, is there anything that we can do to put an electronic buffer, right? Like, now you can submit. Back in the day, you used to have to register an airplane by sending a $5 bill, 2 forms that were carbon copied to the FAA aircraft registry, and it would take 14 days for them to open it, and then they'd have to go do a cash run with their $5. And nowadays we can do it online through the aircraft registry portal. We're seeing a lot of that a little bit with the introduction of Huddle a couple years back, where AMEs now can upload, but we're still finding that Huddle is difficult in the fact that only an AME can access it. We can't access it. The uploads, AMEs are frustrated that the uploads, there's size limits, there's name limits. The FAA will disregard things that are named properly. So it's, Huddle's frustrating, and I hope we keep pushing to, those processes where, the FAA claims they're understaffed. Well, you have an incredible amount of staff that's literally just opening mail right now. And you have an incredible amount of staff that's literally sending out hard mail right now. You know what I mean? Is there any way that we could move those people to something more productive with their days instead of getting paper cuts on correspondence? I don't know. Definitely something that begs a little bit of exploration, but certainly sorry for the condition that families find themselves in. That is very, very frustrating, and a lot of what these guys do is humanize pilots and our clients to the FAA, so they're not just a PI number and an app number. Try and put a little bit of sympathy in them. So, next one from Grimshaw Aviation. Should a pilot be rejected from receiving a medical with a bill of health that's great, but during a stress test, the heart shows signs of past heart attack, but never had a heart attack, and has an open heart surgery to remedy the issue? Interesting.
It was a very specific question.
Super specific.
Yeah, obviously calling in about a friend, right? So, but I mean, again, this is one of those things where the FAA could 413 you to death in this instance. Once they get hold of, something in your medical history, in this case, if it was a stress test, once they get a hold of that, they can 413 you to death. And as we said, a 413 is not a denial, so you aren't among the 0.01%, but they're going to sit on your medical, and they will not issue that until they get the information they need. So this seems like an opportunity, prime time to reach out to an aviation attorney and get some help kind of dealing with the FAA in that situation, because that can often be a brick wall running into a issue that the FAA sees as an issue, but again, may not be.
So true.
And I think also, to piggyback off Matt there, really, and this is also puts a doctor in a hard position, right? Your cardiologist probably has, unless they're working with a lot of pilots, I doubt they're really versed on what exactly they need to do for the FAA side of the house.
Yeah.
And they're seeing so many clients. They're doing what their notes are great, but they're not explaining everything.
Yeah.
Right. They're not being detailed as they need to be. Again, it's just trying to just get that education to your cardiologist, because sometimes really, in a case where it sounds like you have a past history that isn't necessarily affecting you now and it's remedied, right? The FAA has very specific requests, and by specific I mean pretty boilerplate templates, right, where they just ask, get a cardiological evaluation. Okay, well, what exactly do you want to hear? What details do you want to hear? I'm assuming whoever asking the question got a 413 letter, which is very basic, doesn't say much in there, and then they have to take it to their doctor, who then looks at that and says, what do you want? I'll just give you the basics, because that's what they're looking for, it sounds like here. When really they need to say, yeah, he had, this test in the back, history, then he had surgery here, he had this here, now he's here, and he's been here for X amount of years, and based on the medicine that I've seen here, there's no reason that the change in, barometric pressure or whatever they want to see, right? They're not going to put all that in there because they're probably not a teaching doctor either.
Sure.
So, that's why it's difficult to know exactly how to specifically answer a question like that, because you kind of might already have a good answer, and then the FAA will need to tell you why, but they won't.
Yeah. Cardiac issues are interesting because the FAA does not currently employ a cardiologist.
Right.
So they have a lot of psychologists, they have a lot of psychiatrists, they have a lot of GPs, but they don't have a cardiologist. So they have to send things to the cardiac panel.
Right.
And the cardiac panel's backed up, and so the FAA tends to err on the side of caution when it comes to anything heart related, because they're just terrified, right? They just don't know what they don't know. They don't have that specialty. So yeah, like Zeke was saying, I mean, you really, really need to fine tune a treating cardiologist and essentially turn a treating cardiologist into an aeromedical cardiologist to make sure the FAA is satiated, right?
Again, no definition.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No definition. Grimshaw followed up, is this something that Mosaic will help with? No. Mosaic has to do with light sport aircraft modernization, making those more realistic so they're not gliders. Sorry for glider pilots. I didn't mean anything by that.
Hit the next one up.
Am I Resoli Urate?
Fell off at the end. You were going strong, but you fell off at the end of that one.
Man, I thought I had it too. I was jogging into it. And
You did all right. It was all right.
That slow walk. All right. What if I had a recent mental health history that was misdiagnosed, and I still need to do a long will I still need to do a long process to get my first class medical certificate? Which one? Which one's good throw?
I got it.
We get this question a lot. This is a great question.
Yeah, no, this is a perfect question, frankly. Recent medical mental health history. Obviously, details aside, because online form, I totally understand that. It is going to depend on what that history looks like. It's going to depend on prescriptions. It's going to depend on when it was, active symptoms, what the actual diagnosis is, like Matt was talking about earlier, right? Is this an uncomplicated case, or is this something where there's a major issue in the background? There are ways through all of them. Some of them will require an expert, right? And a lot of the experts out there that we work with, we trust 100,000% because they, I think they're reasonable. They're good people. They try and give you a fair shake, I guess is a good way of saying that. So when you're talking about a first class medical too, you got to know that even though 107, 207, and 307, which is for first, second, and third class mental health regulations, they're scrutinized different. First class, those are the guys and gals with a bunch of 150 plus people behind them.
A lot of responsibility in that medical.
Yeah, so those are going to be vetted a different way as well. So, how long of a process? Again, if it's something that's more of a major issue, we could see that and we could think, let's maybe try and build a record showing, maybe like therapy records or whatever it is, hit up with a psychiatric evaluation as well. Long process. I don't know how long.
I could to just jump in and kind of piggyback on that. Like even if it's misdiagnosed, unfortunately, that probably will also involve a long process. Sometimes even unfortunately a longer process if you're misdiagnosed, because that can often take going to get Zeke was talking about getting experts to kind of rebuff whatever diagnosis the FAAs hit you with, and so that'll often be battling experts if you have again a misdiagnosis in your past. So unfortunately, especially with the first class, that could be a long process, and so yes, misdiagnoses unfortunately can cause just as many issues as a correct diagnosis.
That's a great point. Because also, to piggyback off of that,
I love it.
misdiagnosing, like Matt was saying, it really depends on who did the diagnosis too.
Yeah.
Right? Like that could be a psychiatrist looking at you and giving you something. That's a lot harder to get over than, a nurse throwing it in there, or
social worker,
or a social worker, or somebody who is training, right? I've had cases, horror stories where people literally have gone through week by week and changed that diagnosis. So you kind of question the reality of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I will throw out, even though we're saying, that's probably a long fight, you only have to fight it once.
Oh yeah.
Right, and that's a good thing that pilots don't really think about. Is it is worth the investment? It's worth the time. It's worth the energy to fight it, because once you fight it and win, you're done. It's not going to come up again next medical. It's not going to come up again 2 medicals from now. Put in the effort now, fight it, get it done right, squash it, run it to ground, and then you don't have to do it again. So something to definitely think about. On those fronts.
That is my favorite conversation with pilots, and we get them to the end of the road, get them a medical, and then they ask, what do I have to do now? Nothing. You say previously reported, no change, and you move along. So that is one of the best conversations. Just like Joe said, you fight it once, and that's it.
Yeah, this is an interesting one here from Walter SPQR 77. G'day from Australia, Brisbane. Currently working on being able to fly in the United States. Any particular firms you recommend in the States that when we get started on the legal aspects? So super cool that we're hearing from Australia. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really neat.
What time is it right now?
Yeah, what time is it in Australia?
Should you be in bed?
Good morning, good night. Yeah.
Just good day.
Yeah, just good day.
Good day, yeah. 3 a.m. Okay.
3 a.m. All
right.
So there's a lot of cool aspects. That's the one neat part about aviation internationally, is that there are ways to, I'll call it, nationalize a license, right? To take a foreign license and to make it a U.S. license. You have to do a check ride, but the FAA recognizes all the experience from the other countries, transfers them over. All you got to do then is to get a U.S. medical. Super simple process. Obviously, unless there's some medical concerns, because a lot of other countries, go figure, are less strict than us when it comes to medical, or are more defined and are granting special issuances more openly or freely than the FAA is. So that's kind of the only rub. But as far as the certificate transfer, super easy to do. And there's even an FAA online portal for transferring all that stuff over. And they actually do a really, really good job of that. So feel free always to call an aviation attorney. I think most aviation attorneys know about that. So we have 15 more minutes, so leave comments, leave questions. I saw one pop up that got buried a little bit, and I'm gonna take that time to be angry. So we had a question that popped up that said, what is the FAA's difference in definition from abuse to dependence for alcohol? And I know that is one that was a P Page. That's right?
Oh, yeah,
that's who asked that question, P Page.
Yeah.
And I know when that one came up, I was looking out of the periffs at these fellas, and I saw the little.
Oh yeah.
I'll take the first stab at it, because this is the hill that I will die on. The FAA uses, so if you look at 67, 107, 207, 307, first class, second class, third class, if you look at A, subsection B addresses abuse and dependence. Generally speaking, dependence is you're an alcoholic, abuse means you messed up one time. In order to meet dependence, there are 4 criteria. Those criteria were based on the DSM-3. The DSM-3 was 5 criteria, and you had to meet 3 of the 5 within the preceding 12 months. The FAA is 4, and it's any one of them. You can meet any one of them. So, like, tolerance is one that the FAA uses a lot, and they use BAC for that. Anything .08 up to but not including .15, generally thought to be abuse. Anything .15 up to but not including .20, generally a sliding scale abuse to dependence. Anything from .20 and greater, you're an alcoholic. Those terms are not industry recognized anymore. Meaning, if you were to go to an a substance abuse specialist, right? A substance use specialist, as they're called nowadays, you would not get a diagnosis of abuse or dependence. It is unbelievably frustrating that the FAA still sits in those two realms. But I will tell you the difference is in the landscape in which you paint the event. Obviously, that is being said very generally. If you come to us with a .38 on a DUI, you may have a problem. But there is certainly some arguments to be made looking at how the FAA use their objective diagnoses. And there's some subjective arguments that you could put in there to meet the objective burden. But I will say that this needs to change. The FAA needs to, they've lost the plot on this one. So.
Yeah, I mean, like Joe said, he was going to die on that hill. To me, he planted his flag, and he did a good job. So I agree. The abuse and dependence are outdated. The FAA needs to, get with the times, for lack of a better term. They need to step it up, open up the DSM-5 TR. So we're even, moving along there. So they just need to get up to date and accept, again, mental health has come so far in the last decade or two, and the fact that we're still living in early 2000s and 90s with our regs is just ridiculous, and can make the skies less safe rather than safer. So we need to get working in the right direction again.
I think they covered that one. You guys did a good job. 5 stars.
Love that. I'm not even gonna try it. Like I don't. The online.
This would be a second attempt at this game, though.
I think that might be the same one from before.
Oh yeah. Zeke, how can they be a client of yours?
Yeah, give us a call. First step. How can I be your guys' client? I'm trying to get my medical. My dream is to be an airline pilot. Still is. Yes, still is. Make sure that does not go away. Shortages, just follow your dream. I mean, seriously though, that's all you need. Best thing we do is we do consultations. We kind of split up our representation in a way. So we do a consultation first. If it's something that we think you guys can get on your own, again, nothing's too small, right? The consultations are going to give you that peace of mind, whatever it is that gets you through. We love talking about this. I don't really like to talk a lot, so this has been it's been a good day because it's something I know a lot about. So give us a call first, do a consultation if it's something that you really need help with, because it's you want to use our collective minds, which, by the way, even though you're working with just me or you're working with Matt, all 3 of us talk about these. We have a great roundtable that we chat about cases and get different perspectives on, so it's not stale. I don't get stuck in my ways. Anyway, consultation, full representation. We're doing everything we were just talking about before, getting you through all the way to when you hear back from the FAA. And if they come back with a 67413, we're figuring out a new way for you then. Some fights are short, some are long, but to be a client, just call. Start off there, and you'll talk to one of us.
Yeah. Matt, this one just came through. I know. I think you and I just we're having a little session about this last week. Summit Flight Training says MedExpress claims real-time monitoring. However, it appears not to be updated, dancing from step to step and not accurate. Is there a known reason for this?
Oh man, if I knew the reason for this, I'd be making a lot more money around here, let me tell you. But unfortunately, you're not the only people running into that issue. We are seeing a lot of the online forums. Our airmen come to us and say, "Hey, I just checked my MedExpress and it said I have a medical on the way. I have not received that in the mail." We have to have a tough conversation that says, "Hey, we just called in. They're not sending a medical at all." It's a huge issue. We seem to run into trouble with the FAA, whether we deal with snail mail, hard copies, or if we're dealing with them online. So we just are are really hopeful that these processes start getting updated soon, and we start becoming more efficient and, more importantly, more accurate for these pilots. We don't want to be giving false hope or anything else through these inaccurate MedExpress and online portals. So definitely something that needs to be addressed by the FAA.
Yeah, it's super important. Trust the actual mail, right? The FAA communicates via mail. So far, that's as far as they've gotten. They used to do ponies and ravens, but now they're on mail. So they're not great at online. Probably don't rely on that right now. I really wish it was different.
Yeah, I think a big one is the stop sign, right?
Yeah.
Stop sign comes up and you're like, oh, geez, I'm done. Everything's over. Stop sign also means we just want more information. So symbolism.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys think about astrology, but we'll go down that whole stop sign route. Yeah. Anyway.
Got a question from Mr. Mark 88. How easy is it to disclose a new medical condition with your help? How long can I expect to be grounded?
Depends on the condition.
Right.
Regardless of condition, I would get in touch with us well before your new medical examination. I can tell you that if you come, months before we get all the paperwork we need to, and you're still on that good, valid medical from your private or your previous exam, then the next time you go in, some of these conditions require deferral. That's not the AME's issue. I know a lot of guys might think the AME just was being whatever, bad day in the office. Some of them require, by policy, deferral. AME, great AMEs, they can't issue you in that visit. So the best way of doing that is, again, coming with us. We're vetting everything with you, so then when you go to your AME, we're giving the AME everything they need, and we're going to the FAA directly, so that when you are deferred, everything should be at the FAA's office, so that when it's that first time it goes through, you're not waiting months getting a decision and then going back and getting more information, right? Or even if you go to your AME first and your AME says, oh, well, you should go get this stuff, right? You're just taking months and months away.
Yeah.
So disclosing a new medical condition, absolutely go. Try and figure out what you need first, so it's as short of a time period as you can, unless it's a 6115 report where you have to report within 60 days. If it's a new medical condition, really they're not going to know until you're going in for your next exam.
Yep.
Sounds like another fantastic it depends. So
yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Yep. It definitely helps to have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to be more proactive than it is reactive in this industry. So often we end up reactive. So
yeah, how many calls do we get that are after the 413 has come in, where we see the 413 and we're like, oh, we could have addressed this 8 months ago when they turned in their application.
Right.
And rather than getting the 413 back, they could have had the medical at that 8 months.
Right.
And now we got to go through another 8 months, whatever it may be. So reach out sooner rather than later.
Which is why we try and educate as much as it's cliche, for real.
Yeah, 100%. This one came in an interesting one. Do these things that potentially shut down a potential pilot, so medical conditions that shut down a potential pilot, as you're reviewing, prevent these individuals from flying commercial or private after a denial? So
maybe I'm not. Yeah.
I think where the important part about this question is after a denial. So a lot of what we do is, one, looking at whether that's an actual denial, right? The FAA is super unclear about that. Super unclear about what an actual denial is, what an actual final denial is. And to the point where their letters that they give are, surprise, surprise, they're stock. They're just form made, right? And for the longest time, honestly, probably 4 or 5 years, the address was incorrect for what you were supposed to send in. Like, that's how these letters are crazy. A lot of the letters will put the NTSB appeal notice on there. When your case is not ripe for NTSB, they'll put a 409 instruction on there when your case should be going to the NTSB. So number one is we look at denials and decide whether you actually denied. But here's a fun fact, is even though you've been denied, that's not stopping you from resubmitting another medical application, right? Medical is dynamic. Medicine is dynamic. The clinical world is dynamic. You can treat for things. You can evolve. You can become asymptomatic from symptomatic. So there's always a way to reapply in the future. So.
And then I'll ask you a question. So for the commercial side, if you get a denial in employment, how does that? I know you're not an employment attorney, but
yeah, great question. I say this to a lot of our clients that are trying to get to the airlines, and they're saying when they get a special issuance, and they say, Joe, am I done? Like, is this dream done? To go back to what you said, Zeke, no, the dream is never done, and it's always worth fighting for. And what I tell people all the time is when you put down at a SkyWest application or interview or like a Southwest interview, United interview, when you put your certificate down, it does not say special issuance on the top of it. That medical certificate is a medical certificate. So that's what the airlines care about, right? Is do you have a pilot's license, right? And do you have a medical? And even with an SI, you can put down a medical and it's no different than somebody who doesn't have an SI.
yeah, nuanced, but very important. So.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say as we come to a close here, I know we were only on Instagram for this one, but if you guys are, if you like this, if you're interested in this, you want to see this some more, please reach out to us. This is a great way for us to reach a wide body of pilots. We always talk about in this division, the micro versus the macro, right? And this is a great time for us to do, to have a more macro effect on our industry, to be able to talk to a lot of pilots, to get the conversations going, and to, like both Zeke and Matt said today, educate people. So if you like it, please feel free to comment. Try and throw your questions in the comments. We'll try and get to them offline as well. Make sure y'all are taken care of there. But please follow us on any of the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all that stuff, and let us know if you want to do this. You want us to do this some more. Let us know your questions. Let us know your concerns. It's really, really cool to have this aviation community. And then I think on behalf of me, thank you guys very much for doing this. I appreciate y'all taking time out of your busy day to do this and to help the group as a whole and to provide some answers for a lot of pilots that need them. Always an absolute pleasure.
Always a pleasure chatting with the gang here and helping educate pilots, like you said. Love to do it.
Same.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.